Welcome, I'm Bill Anderson. I'm coming live from a very sunny and warm Costa del Sol. It's warm outside, but still a bit fresh indoors at the moment, so I'm kind of wrapped up. Now, my guest today has a very, very impressive CV. First of all, she graduated from Guy's School of Physiotherapy. She has an MSc in Health Sciences and a PhD in pulmonary rehabilitation. That kind of gives us a clue what we're going to be talking about. She was also assistant professor of physiotherapy in St George's University, has done lots of things. She's got over 100 peer-reviewed publications, and peer-reviewed publications are not that easy to come by. I want to welcome my guest today, Dr. Rachel Garrod. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Bill. Thank you.
It's lovely to have you on, Rachel. We met a few weeks ago at Marbella TV, and I was listening to what you were talking about there, and I thought this is something that we can really talk about here. Um, what exactly, first of all, does a pulmonary or respiratory physiotherapist do?
I'm glad you asked that because part of the problem with my profession is that actually people don't understand what I do.
Yeah,
Everybody understands physiotherapy, and the principle of physiotherapy is that we use movement to improve injuries, to
right,
help heal. So, as a back and neck physiotherapist, they might do some mobilization on your neck, some manipulation, and they'll give you some exercises. So, if you have a neck injury, you're chatting to your friend or a back problem, your friend might well say, "Oh, go and see a physio."
yeah,
But physiotherapists, like medicine, we specialize in different areas. So there are physiotherapists who look after patients with neurological disease. There are physiotherapists who specialize in looking after children, pediatric physios. But my area of speciality is cardiorespiratory, but I mainly work with patients with lung disease.
right,
So what that means, so I am looking after patients predominantly with lung problems.
okay,
And that may be the common known problem of COPD, which you will know as emphysema
right,
or chronic bronchitis. But we also look after asthma. We look after patients after they've been ventilated for a long period of time. We look after patients post COVID and during COVID, cystic fibrosis.
right.
So we have a wide variety of patients that we look after, but we're physios, so we use movement to help treat the injury.
Right. Okay. Listen, Rachel, we have got a lot to talk. I have got like 1,000 questions here, because I think it's such a fascinating area. It's about breathing, isn't it? I mean, surely we all know how to breathe.
Yeah, we do, but is something called there is something called dysfunctional breathing, and
Right.
unfortunately, 40 to 50% of us have periods of dysfunctional breathing. And that might be just a one-off occasion, if you're a bit stressed or a bit anxious or frightened or something. Your breathing pattern may become a bit erratic, or it might be a bit apical, or you might even do something that we call breath hold. I'm a terrible breath holder. When I'm driving, I can get a bit nervous,
Right.
and driving through tunnels is my like. I really don't like going through tunnels. And what I used to do would go, I just breath hold through the tunnel, and if it's a long tunnel, well, when I come out the other end, I'm gasping for air.
Right. Right. So we all know how to do it, but sometimes we're just not doing it right.
Yeah, sometimes we're not doing it right, and we're usually not breathing to optimize the lung volume and the efficiency of oxygen going through our body. I mean, if you have a lung disease, then that makes it even harder to breathe
Right.
correctly because you can have problems with the actual structure of the lungs and the structure of the airways and the air sacs in the lungs. But it is surprising how many people show these dysfunctional breathing patterns and they have no underlying pathology at all. They haven't got any disease.
Right, right. I'm not sure if I picked this up from you in a conversation or where I picked it up, but there is sometimes a relationship between poor breathing or incorrect breathing and posture, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, when your posture is bad, then you usually, if you're hunched, then you're reducing your thoracic capacity. So you're not enabling your lungs to fully ventilate, fully inflate when you breathe in. So yeah, poor posture can have problems. The most common form of dysfunctional breathing that we see is something called chronic hyperventilation syndrome. Have you ever heard of that?
No, but I think I can probably work out what it is, but don't know why it is.
What it is as it sounds like, it's a long-term condition, and it's where people hyper, so they over ventilate for the body's needs. So it's
Right.
quite interesting because we're often told take big deep breaths all the time, aren't we? We think that that's a
Sure.
good thing to do, but in reality, if you're taking big deep breaths all the time when you're at rest and your body doesn't actually need a great big deep breath, then what you do is you over ventilate for the body's requirements. And
Right.
in fact, our lungs are amazing. I mean, they can take your lungs better than mine because you're a man. So you've got a capacity of up to about 6 litres in your lungs, that
Right.
you could fill your lungs to about 5 to 6 litres. But at rest, you only need half a litre of air going in and out.
Right. Okay. So what would be the effects then of people hyperventilating in this way?
Well, they present, when I worked in the hospitals in the UK, they would often present at A&E with what was a suspected heart attack or an epileptic fit.
Right.
And it was all down to the breathing. People with chronic hyperventilation syndrome, and as I say, 40 to 60% of the population have been known to suffer from this in studies when they look at it. They will actually have tingling in the hands and the fingers. They may have tingling around the mouth. They may feel permanently giddy. They may have chest pain, and also a sense of breathlessness that isn't breathlessness because of a pathology, but it's something we call air hunger. So it's like a sensation of never being able to get a full breath,
Right.
where in actual fact their lungs are fine. But what's really happening is that because they're over breathing all the time, they're breathing out too much carbon dioxide.
Right. Okay. So is that down to the way the body processes this sort of excess of air in the lungs? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what happens? So we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. That's our normal physiological response. The carbon dioxide is created in the body as a result of all the metabolic activities happening in the cells and everything. So carbon dioxide goes out, oxygen comes in, hunky dory. The trigger to breathe, people sometimes think the reason what triggers us to take a breath is a lowering of oxygen. It actually isn't. And that makes sense if you think about it, because actually, if you had to wait until your oxygen was low to take another breath, that could be quite
You'll be
dangerous.
passing out all the time. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our body is, in fact, very clever, and it uses a rise in carbon dioxide as a trigger to take a breath. So we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide, and then we have a little gap, a pause. And in that pause, the carbon dioxide creeps up again, comes up again. And when it gets to about 5% in the blood, it triggers another breath.
Right.
But if you're someone who breathes too rapidly, or if you're someone who breathes mainly from up here, or if you're someone who's taking too many deep breaths, then your carbon dioxide will be low because you're breathing out the carbon dioxide.
Right.
And And because the body is really clever, it gets used to this lowered carbon dioxide as the trigger to breathe. So we've got chemoreceptors in the brain, and the chemoreceptors in the brain go, oh, okay, instead of waiting until it's 5%, I'll trigger the next breath at 4% or at 3%. And so
Right.
that sort of sets up this cycle where, in fact, you're breathing too much for your body's requirements. And
Hmm.
then because your carbon dioxide is low, your blood vessels shut down because that's what happens in low carbon dioxide. Your nervous system is affected because the carbon dioxide influences the nervous system. Your muscles can go into something called tetanic spasms, actually look like epileptic fits.
Right.
And you can spend years being investigated by the cardiologists and the neurologists and the every other
Oh,
ist.
the audiologists.
Yeah, yeah. Until you eventually come around to a respiratory physio.
Right. Right. Rachel, I want to just ask a couple of questions. You were obviously knee deep in academia when you were working in the United Kingdom. What prompted you to move to Spain? What was that about?
But I didn't really want to.
Oh, you didn't, but you're here anyway.
Well, it was my husband is older than me, and he wanted to retire here, and he plays golf, and he loves, so wants to be here. So we had a bit of a deal. At the time, we weren't married. We'd been living together for 11, 12 years, I think, but we weren't married. So we made a bit of a deal, which was he marries me, I get to choose the house where we live, and we get a dog. So
Right.
if all those three things happened,
So you're living in the house of your choice.
I am.
You're married and you've got a dog. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got a gorgeous puppy. I'm very happy with my husband and I love my house. So
Good.
yeah, it's all right.
But this must have presented you with some challenges from a practice point of view of really starting all over again, Rachel.
Yeah. I would say the first year the initial thing that I had to do was get my physiotherapy qualifications recognized over here,
Right.
which theoretically should be, we were in the EU at the time, Britain was in the EU at the time, so theoretically it should have been a simple matter of translating all the documents that my university documents,
Mm-hmm.
having them stamped and
Apostle. Yeah.
apostilled.
Apostle. Yeah.
Yeah, get that done, take that to the Colegio de Fisioterapeuta here, and they were supposed to just sign it off, but they didn't.
Funny old thing that this happened to me with one of my degrees as well, and I got something in the end, but it wasn't what I expected. But it should have been simple, but it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't. Yeah.
I had some sympathy with them because when I did my physiotherapy training, it was a diploma. It was a 3-year diploma. Now, pretty much all of physiotherapy is a degree.
Right.
But the fact that I had a PhD and a master's should have sort of, overcome that problem.
Yeah.
But their argument was their physiotherapists here in Spain had done a 4-year degree course, and I'd only done a 3-year diploma. So how could I have the same knowledge of physiotherapy as their physiotherapist?
Yes. Yeah.
So they offered me an opportunity to work in a hospital for 12 months, Spanish hospital. They weren't concerned. It's not the regulatory's body to determine whether you can speak the language or not, by the way, interestingly, because I would have most definitely failed if it was that.
Right.
uh,
Sure.
that becomes your employer's
Yeah.
responsibility. So had I then gone to work in a hospital here, it would be their responsibility to determine if my Spanish was good enough. Anyhow, I didn't want to work in a hospital for 12 months. I really didn't want to do that. It
Right.
wasn't moving here to do that.
Yeah.
So we got a lawyer involved and waited another year. So I think all in all, it took me about 2 years to get the registration sorted. And
Right.
the sort of made a claim. And I had to go back to some of my previous jobs and get sort of references from them and show that I had done clinical work as well as academia and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's as you say that this was at a time when we were still part of the EU, and one would have thought that qualifications would have been recognised sort of pretty much universally throughout the EU. But I know from my experience that wasn't the case. And because I got my first degree in 1979. And when I took it into the Subdelegación de Gobierno with all the papers and everything, he said to me, "Oh, I don't know if this is any good. It's very old." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm very old. So what do you what do you expect?" I did get something done eventually, but yeah, I mean, apart from the sort of paperwork side, you were leaving all of your contacts behind, all of your patients, the people who knew you, and you were
Oh, yeah.
starting really from scratch, more or less. Yeah.
Oh, it was really hard. I mean, my academic colleagues were absolutely shocked and stunned and couldn't believe that I was leaving because to do in academia to get as far as I had is a privileged position. And I
Right.
mean, it was a great job. Um, But, you know, you can do the same thing forever and ever, or you can try something different.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't my husband wanting to. But so yes, I did. I had to. I started off. I made some colleagues, some university lecturer colleagues, relationships. I thought maybe I could support some of the PhD students at the University of Malaga,
Right.
physiotherapy. But that didn't work out because they didn't really need me. So that didn't work out. And then I did eventually what did work. I tried lots of things. I had the idea of doing something called health holidays, where I was bringing people over from UK
Uh-huh.
to and I was working. I organized some work with some. I organized a relationship with the hotels here that had nice gyms in them. And the idea was these clients would come over from the UK, stay in the hotel, and then I would go and visit them on a daily basis and give them exercise programs, education, sort of lifestyle change, behavior change
Yeah.
support. So that seemed to go quite well. And I managed to have 3 clients who were sort of signing up for that. And one of them died.
Oh
And
dear.
the other one's myeloma came back. He was in remission. And then the other one decided she didn't want to anyway. So that
Right.
didn't really work either.
No, no. But
And
but you
what did
you you have been able to really establish yourself here now,
what
and
made the what did work was going to the GPs. I went to the
okay,
GPs and talked to them, English speaking GPs, and some of the Kieran and HC Hospital. And I started to get referrals to see patients. I chose to see patients at home. I started to get referrals to see patients there.
yeah,
So that's what I do. And also, I got in touch with some university back in the UK, and I do a lot of online lecturing as well now.
right,
So
yeah.
got
So
enough work now.
on balance, Rachel, it's worked out a good move for you living down here, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, life before was 90% of it was about work,
yeah,
and now I would say, I would say 40%, 50% is about work. I mean, I love the hiking out here. I'm up in the mountains every week.
right,
I'm walking the dog on the beach. I really enjoy having the time to go to the gym more often and cook more. I did think I'd make soup every day. I had this thing that I was going to go to the market every day and make soup every day. And one day I said to my husband, why haven't I made soup every day? And he said, well, you didn't in England. You don't like making soup.
yeah, but it's what you're describing right now feels like or sounds like a much healthier lifestyle than 90% work.
I think so. I mean, I do still feel like I've peaked a bit earlier. I'm 54. I do still feel that I'd love it if I had the opportunity to start this life right now. Because if I'm
Right.
going to live to 80, which I'm
Yes.
absolutely determined to live to at least 80,
Right.
I might have to have a new endeavor at some point,
Yeah.
a new challenge, a change when I hit 60, I think.
Right. Oh, well, I passed that a few years ago, so so
Yeah, well, so does my husband.
Rachel, sort of going back to the work that you were doing, you are a recognized international expert on COPD, this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So that was what we used to call emphysema, you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and is this something that you still see a lot of? I mean, what's the kind of prevalence of this condition?
Oh, I mean, in a population, you'll have 20% people will be have COPD, and it's particularly common if you've smoked. The main cause of COPD is smoking, so it is going to be in your older generation. And yeah, I would say 90% of my patients have COPD. And how we manage the COPD is that what people don't realize is that you can imagine if you can't breathe, it is incredibly frightening to do anything that gets you out of breath.
Right, yeah,
And you get diagnosed with a lung condition, and if the doctor's going to be pretty brutal, he'll tell you it's a terminal lung condition, and that's pretty horrible, scary news. Often the doctor doesn't tell you that the more you do to get yourself out of breath, the better you will be in the long run.
Yeah.
So the patient goes home, says to whoever at home, this is a disease. And so people stop doing what they were doing before because it makes them breathless and they're frightened to be out of breath. So then they become weaker, their heart becomes weaker, they are unfit, we call it deconditioned. And if
Right.
you think about it, if you're unfit, walking up a hill will make you breathless. So now
Sure.
if you add unfitness to a lung disease, even walking on the flat can make you breathless.
Right. Right. Yeah. My wife did know an elderly Norwegian gentleman over here who he had COPD, and uh, he reckoned that a cigarette in the morning actually cleared his lungs up and made him breathe better. And I'm not recommending that, by the way.
He's not lying then. He's not lying, by the way. There is a very, 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 very tiny bronchodilator effect of nicotine. So
Right.
it opens the airways. And because it is a toxin and because it is a stimulant, it will make you cough. So it will make you clear your throat and bring your phlegm up. The
Right.
problem is, of course, the other effect of what smoking does is it paralyzes the hairs in the, they're called cilia, and they're hairs in the airway. And these hairs are always moving the phlegm so that it's easier to bring out. And smoking paralyzes those hairs,
Right. Okay.
as well as the other damage that it does. I mean, it does tons and tons and tons of damage.
Sure. Sure.
One of the things that I do is a stop smoking program, which is really, really fun. I enjoy that a lot.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, because yeah, there's been some I would say fairly weak efforts from the Spanish government about smoking, but smoking in Spain is actually you will see more people smoking here than you will in probably most European countries, I think.
and it's a real shame because I don't think the doctors here are very proactive about it at all. Because um, the reality, I don't get as many referrals for the stop smoking as I should. And I tend to get the stop smoking clients really by word of mouth. And it is a real shame because I use this absolutely amazing substance product. It's a herbal product and it
Uh-huh.
reduces the urge to smoke. It works on the nicotine receptors in the brain. So there are receptors in the brain that rely on nicotine to give you your endorphins and make you feel good. Now, this tablet that I use, which is made from the seeds of the laburnum tree, it blocks the nicotine receptors in the brain. So
Right.
instead of the receptors in the brain going, "Oh, give me a cigarette, give me a cigarette," the receptors in the brain think they've had a cigarette. So
Right.
it massively reduces the urge to smoke. And it's a real shame because it's not a pharmacological product. It's not a drug. It's a food supplement. So it doesn't have the manufacturing behind it of a pharmacological company. So
Right.
nobody's ever looked at it.
Yeah.
It's just, and
Yeah.
it's really powerful and it's really effective. There's good research to show that it works in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the top journals. And it's a really super powerful thing.
Yeah.
And yet the medical profession just really don't know about it.
Yeah.
So,
But there are a lot of, I think, fairly natural, very effective remedies that, in general, the medical profession either they ignore because they're not allowed to prescribe it,
yeah,
or just don't know about.
yeah.
We've come across this in our personal lives as well. But they don't seem to be very clued up on things that are cheap, over the counter, and effective remedies for a whole range of things.
And I mean, I get why, because I wouldn't want to be a doctor. I mean, the pharmacological component of medicine is huge. And what they have to know and the time that they get to spend with the patient is just, it's just absurd.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
spend an hour every session with my clients.
sure.
And my husband, who was a doctor, he used to have 6 minutes with
Yeah,
the patient.
yeah.
Like, what can you do in 6 minutes?
Yeah, I don't think it's essentially any different here in Spain. I've never been to the doctor here, but I think it's pretty much the same in primary care settings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I certainly don't blame them. And again, I don't think they are so busy that even thinking outside of their literally right, okay, what can I prescribe here now to deal with this problem? Even anything outside of that framework is almost impossible for them to have the headspace to think about, which is
Right.
why I'm sure that even though I spend a lot of time with the doctors here trying to remind them of respiratory physiotherapy and how useful it is, I don't get as many referrals as I should. And often it's the patients that I've seen who go back and say to the doctor, oh, I
Right.
saw Rachel, you should tell other people to go and see Rachel.
Right, right. Rachel, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to look at some specific things. We're going to talk about your breathing workshops, maybe a little bit more about the COPD and asthma, anxiety, breathing for energy. We've touched on the overbreathing and what you're doing online and how that's working out for you. So we have a lot to talk about
Yeah.
after the break.
All right. See you 5.
Yeah.
Bye.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. I'm coming live from the Costa del Sol with my guest today, Dr. Rachel Garrod, who is I have to say this slowly, Rachel, respiratory physiotherapist. And we've been talking quite generally about a number of things. We probably have around 90,000 listeners at the moment across the world. And you were saying about 20% of the population would suffer from COPD at any one time. So we could have 18,000 people listening to us at the moment that suffer from COPD. And you've actually been involved in writing a book about this, haven't you?
Yeah. This was lovely. Well, I think you're meaning the one that's called The Secret to Thriving with COPD.
That's the one,
I,
yes.
yes, I've got some more academic books which are not so much fun.
Right.
They're all right. You're all right at doing that well. Yeah, The Secret to Thriving with COPD was a fabulous thing because a colleague of mine from Facebook, really, I suppose, she is a lady with very, very, very severe COPD. She's on 24-hour oxygen and she's pretty limited. But
Right.
she is absolutely phenomenal and she really, really sort of came back to life as a result of respiratory physiotherapy and as a result of pulmonary rehabilitation. And so she said to me one day, she emailed me and she said, do you mind it? I'm writing a book about pulmonary rehabilitation and how to manage COPD. And she said, do you mind if I put your details in the book? And I said, no, of course not. I said, if you want, but it's up to you, I would help you write it because it sounds great. So we did it together she was in Florida, I'm over here. We did it together online
Right.
and we wrote it as, it's kind of like the patient voice and the physio voice. So Dawn Lawson, she would say, I'm on oxygen and I need the oxygen, but the oxygen doesn't always stop me feeling breathless. So then
Right.
I would write an explanation about what the oxygen's doing, why it's working, and what the other causes of the breathlessness that might be. Then she might say something, so that's how we get it, it's a patient voice and then my voice.
Right.
And it's great because we've had some really, really lovely reviews. I mean, people saying it's been a game changer for them, life changer. At the end of the book, there's a whole series about how to exercise, what to do with respect to exercise. And so it was a lovely book to do. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
How would people get access to that if it's something they're interested in, Rachel?
Yeah, you can get that on Amazon, amazon.com, amazon.es, Amazon UK. You can get that. You can get it either as a hardback, paperback, or as an ebook. It's
Right.
really, we made it as cheap as we could, and I think the ebook is only about €4 or something like
Okay.
that.
So that's
Really,
the secret to thriving with COPD. If this is an area that people are really interested in, it sounds like a really interesting way to put a book together. Actually,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We
So,
won an award. We won an award from the Times Best COPD Self-Help Book.
wow, well done.
But then I
And
did think there probably aren't that many COPD self-help books.
well, yeah, but the other thing that for people who don't know this, even when you win awards and things for books, it usually doesn't mean you can just retire on the profits, does it? So, Rachel, there are other things that you work with, and I don't know if I'm doing this wrong, but I'm getting this idea that a lot of what you're doing is looking at, I don't know, physiotherapy or exercises that actually go along with helping people to improve their breathing, whether it's increasing their capacity or just increasing their general level of fitness that allows them to exercise more and better. Would that be right to say?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I do a little bit. So basically, what I'm really dealing with a lung disease is I'm dealing with the breathing pattern, I'm dealing with the whole of the body, and I'm also dealing with the anxiety that comes with that condition. So I do hypnotherapy as well, and that's really useful in helping manage the anxiety and helping people get more positive. And then we'll have a whole body strengthening program, and then there'll be work that's specifically on the breathing exercises, and
Yeah.
those are the ones. It's the breathing exercises that I think you were referring to that we do in the workshop.
Right. Okay. Okay. And obviously, I think that the other respiratory disease that people will be most familiar with, which you also work with, is asthma. And again, I get the sensation that this is something that has gone up and up and up in the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years. I've come across more people who say they have asthma than I ever remember when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Is that the case, or is it just
Yes, I think so. I think the prevalence has increased of asthma. I mean, there's a lot of theories, but nothing's been proven. But the one that was mooted the most was the not having enough bugs when you're young theory.
yes?
Because
I know.
when I was out in the garden eating the earth and all the rest of it. So your body got an immune response to all the bugs and the viruses and whatnot around.
Yeah.
And then it started getting more sanitized. But I'm not sure that one's even proven. They don't really know why, to be
Right.
honest, I think.
So what would be your approach for someone with asthma? Would it be a sort of a holistic approach, or would it be for a chronic episode? What would you advise people who suffer from asthma?
Well, one of the things we know about physiotherapy and asthma is that we know there's lots and lots of research, and we know without a shadow of a doubt that physiotherapy improves the symptoms of asthma and reduces the use of asthma medication.
Right.
What it doesn't do is it doesn't change the underlying pathology, and that's quite a big thing in physiotherapy. We don't change the underlying pathology, but we make the symptoms better. And actually, at the end of the day, who cares what the pathology is if you don't feel so bad?
Well,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so the medicine is there to affect the underlying pathology, whereas it doesn't always improve the symptoms. Whereas we
Right.
work on symptoms. And in asthma, we know that a large number of people with asthma have this dysfunctional breathing pattern that we talked about earlier. And so we might spend 4 to 6 weeks, maybe twice a week sessions, actually changing that breathing pattern and teaching people how to breathe more effectively. Asthma management from a physio point of view tends to be much more around the actual breathing pattern and the breathing techniques, because a
Right.
lot of people with asthma tend to breathe very shallowly, very erratically, and over breathe as well.
Okay. Right. And I guess this is something that potentially you could find yourself working with more and more then.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm doing a lot of work post COVID now for people who had COVID lung infections that's damaged their lungs, or if they had to have a prolonged period in hospital, so they actually came out of hospital very, very weak,
Right.
and very breathless, particularly if they were ventilated for a long time. We do
Yes.
something which is really fascinating. I love it. It's called respiratory muscle training,
Okay.
and I use a gadget which is a respiratory muscle trainer, and it's like having a weight for if you were to have a weight to work your biceps,
Right.
it's like that. You're actually breathing resistance. So you're breathing through resistance, and you have to breathe and use your respiratory muscles, because it's also muscles that are involved in breathing, and
Right.
you have to use those muscles. And the gadget enables you to strengthen those muscles, and that's something really. We all go to the gym, strengthen our arms, strengthen our legs, but we don't think about the importance of keeping our breathing muscles strong as well.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right. I've got some other things here. You said anxiety, and I think we can probably all make a link between the way we breathe and anxiety. Yeah. That I suppose it's possibly heading into the hyper breathing, the over breathing area. Um, what is the relationship then between anxiety and the way we breathe, and what problems does that cause?
So, I mean, if you think about it, if you're stressed or frustrated, I mean, often these days the frustration might be with the computer or the phone or something like that, and you're getting yourself all worked up over that situation. What will happen in the body is that you will have your autonomic nervous system will be stimulated and your sympathetic drive will be activated. And the sympathetic drive will make you breathe faster, breathe more shallowly, it will make you dry mouthed, and it will make your heart race. So
Yes,
those are the physiological, and those were really important if what you need to do in that stressful situation is run away from the lion that's chasing you or something.
sure.
But unfortunately, if you're just at your computer, it's not really going to help. So
Right.
a lot, and that in turn fuels a sensation of panic. Understandably, your heart is starting to race, your breathing is erratic, your mouth is dry. So now you get more frightened, you have more adrenaline, you have more sympathetic nerve activity.
Yeah.
Now, many of the breathing techniques that we teach actually stimulate the other part of the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic part. And that reduces the heart rate, reduces the cortisol level, reduces the breathing rate.
Yes.
So a lot of our techniques, slow breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, there's something called box breathing.
I don't know that.
Now, that's something that the Navy SEALs use before they're going to go and shoot somebody
Right.
or do. I don't know what they do, but anyway, before they do whatever they do, and it's a stress. They call it like a stress buster, and it's very simple. You breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, out for the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, and you do that cycle, the box cycle,
Right.
maybe 5 or 6 times. I mean, it's so powerful. I was skiing the other day. You know how lucky we are here that we can nip up to the skis to the Sierra Nevada to the
Yes.
skiing. And I'm scared on chairlift, so I have a bit of height anxiety. So I got on the chairlift and I started to, panic. And of course, it's a horrible sensation because you want to throw yourself off the chair, and there's absolutely nothing worse. So even though I know physiologically what's happening to me, I'm still having the same normal physiological response to fear.
Right.
So I started doing my box breathing, and it was interesting. When I started doing it, I realized I couldn't even take a breath in for 4, let alone hold it for 4. I was breathing so erratically. But I persevered and kept going and kept going. And after I'd say about 8 or 9 of these box breathing sessions, I just felt everything calm again. My heart rate slowed. I started to feel chilled. And suddenly I was able to, have a look around and enjoy it. So really,
Yes.
yeah, it does work.
Yes. Right. So it's good that the therapist puts into practice what they tell other people to do, because that doesn't always happen in the medical field.
That is true.
That's sort of dealing with anxiety, and getting the right sort of breathing when you're feeling anxious is one way of relaxing yourself.
Yeah. The trick is, I think, with all breathing exercises that are around about anxiety is, one is to allow that pause, because as I told you, when we pause, we let the carbon dioxide rise naturally, and that helps calm us down and feel better. And the other thing is slow exhalation reduces the heart rate. The other thing
Right.
with breathing is it's really important to always use the nose as much as you possibly can with breathing, because when we breathe with the mouth, we overbreathe. And also, the nose does all sorts of clever things. It moistens, warms, humidifies, moisturizes the air, and it actually improves the oxygen content of the air if you breathe through the nose compared with the mouth.
Right. Okay.
Just little tips.
Yeah. So, Rachel, I want to move on to your breathing workshops that you've been organising. Tell us about them, and tell us what the purpose of the breathing workshops is.
Well, they came about initially from a yoga friend of mine. A yoga friend of mine, we were having a chat one afternoon over lunch and a few drinks, and we realised that the yoga breathing techniques and the physiotherapy techniques have an awful lot in common. And whilst my friend was approaching it from a very sort of Eastern medicine spiritual approach, I could explain the physiology behind the things that she was telling me to do. So, for instance, one breathing technique that they use in yoga, Nadi Sudhi, is a alternate nostril breathing. So you breathe in and out, and then you breathe in and out. And I was saying how great that exercise is because it reduces over breathing. You know, we've talked about over breathing is actually a
Right.
problem. So we ended up getting together, and what we do is we combine. It's a 2-hour workshop, and we basically I talk through the physiology of breathing, how we breathe, what's happening in the body, and we explain many of the yoga, the physiology behind many of the yoga techniques. And then as a group, because we tend to be 5 or 6 or 7 people meet for the workshops, and then we practice these breathing techniques. People can ask questions. Yeah, it's very, very interactive, really good
Right.
fun. Um, yeah, it's been a real success. I hadn't realised we had thought people would come once and that would be the end of it. But actually, we have people coming, regularly to maybe every month to the sessions. It's
Right.
really good fun.
So does that mean that you have to then vary the sessions, or are you presenting the same
Yeah,
stuff in each session?
it's such a good question because that was my fear. I said, well, there's only so much we can teach. So I did ask the people, and they said, no, we just want to come and redo it, remind ourselves, refresh
Right.
ourselves. So, but
Right.
yeah, I was worried about that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So, if you were going to give us some advice, just general advice, Rachel, about our breathing, what would that advice be? Where would you start, and what would the benefits be for us?
I think, I think the most important thing is to recognize that obviously breathing effectively and efficiently is going to be essential for our well-being. And if you're breathing erratically and you have problems, it will put your heart rate up, which in turn will put your blood pressure up, which in turn will, cause problems with your heart.
Yeah.
So, breathing properly is going to have a lasting effect on not only your mental well-being but also your physical well-being. But the thing that a lot of people do is they don't engage the diaphragm when they breathe. So they don't breathe from the tummy. You might hear people talking about tummy breathing, but we need to really make sure that the diaphragm moves down as we breathe. And the way we know that's happening is that the belly comes out as you breathe in.
Yes.
And the other thing is breathing at rest should be almost imperceptible. If you can
Okay.
look at somebody and you can hear them breathing and you can see them breathing, then they're breathing badly. Because in
Okay.
fact, and keep the frequency of breathing down, try and breathe through the nose. And then here's something counterintuitive. Do something that makes you out of breath for 20 minutes every day, properly out of breath.
Right.
Get out of breath.
Okay.
Because not only is that good for the heart, but it stretches the lungs and keeps the capacity of the lungs
Right.
going. And we tend not to do that as we get older, unless you go to the gym or swim or something like that.
Yeah, and as you've already said, if people have any kind of difficulties, they tend to steer away from exercise that could make them feel out of breath.
Yeah,
And it must be a very fine balance, Rachel, getting the right amount of exercise with the right amount of challenge in it,
yeah,
and not overdoing it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. For 90% of people, the worry of overdoing it is exaggerated. I've never actually met, there's only one person I can think of that I've said, so for instance, people say to me, I've got high blood pressure and I can't exercise. Well, I can count on one hand the number of people in which the blood pressure has been too high to
Right. Okay.
exercise. But
Uh,
yeah, that you can overdo it, but most of us won't.
right.
I wish I did.
Yeah, Rachel, you are doing a lot of your work now online. You said you were collaborating with this lady from Florida. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I have a website called betterbreathingphysio.com. So that's PHYSIO, Better Breathing Physio, all one
Okay,
word. My email is Rachel Garrod, Garrod, and then the number one at gmail.com. And you can ring me or WhatsApp me on 699, that's a Spanish number, plus 34,
okay,
699 501 190.
Yeah, just give that
Thank you.
number out again very quickly. So it's 0034, which is for Spain, 699 501 190. Yeah. Rachel, it's absolutely fascinating talking to you. I feel that we've only just sort of scratched the surface of this topic. Well, you know, to say that you've got your degree in an MSc and a PhD, and we've squashed all of that into less than an hour of speaking. But I think that this is a topic that, you know, it doesn't matter who we are, it's relevant to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We all got to breathe, haven't we?
We all got a
Your
breeze,
turn.
dear. Indeed. I can see, yeah, we can see Dave, our producer in France there, and I can see his abdomen coming out as he's breathing in deeply.
He's probably getting stressed because we haven't finished.
We've just got a few seconds left. Rachel, can I say thank you so much to you for joining us today? I think this is a fascinating topic, and all the very best. We'll get this information out to people as well. For everyone who's listened in, have a great weekend, and we will be back next Friday at 1 o'clock. Rachel, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Lovely to meet you as well.
And you.
And thank you, Dave, for helping.